This is the second part of my interview with Glenn Stickling, and this is about the state of the UFO field. Yeah, Glenn, the second part of this little talk will be about the state of the UFO field. So why do you think the US government is into this deception, which has been going on for so many years? Can't we handle the truth about what is going on? Does fear play a major part?
Well, two chapters in the book. One of them, chapter 7, Why the Deception, and chapter 8, The Promotion of Fear and the Manipulation of Reasoning. And I think just the one page is worth bringing out on record.
Yeah.
The promotion and instigation of fear has become the underlying influence on people living on this planet for millennia. Contrary to popular belief or excuse, this is not a natural state of expression, but one fabricated by a specific few to assert dominance over others. The psychological manipulation of fear permeates all aspects of our existence. We are taught to live in a state of fear for our lives, from our neighbors, other global citizens, our future, our accumulations, relationships, religion, jobs, wealth, retirement, etc. Basically, a perpetual cradle-to-grave state of anxiety and imbalance. Why? Simply because within this state of being unsure, this pervasive insecurity, people are reliably and efficiently manipulated into a terrified state of irrational thinking and action, too terrified to think, ask, or challenge those wielding such suppressive powers. That is how control over nearly 8 billion people is successfully manipulated, and it is a major mental challenge of each of us not to succumb to this thought or mentality. This fear has also transformed itself into the UFO field as well. In this case, it is manipulated by many unscrupulous personalities with the same stealth and clandestine purpose, falsely promoting a monstrous threat, both physically and mentally, to our existence. Instead of viable admittance or disclosure, we are bombarded with future threats to exasperate the fear scenarios further. Look closely, and you will discover the same old methods, the exhibition of the same old tactics, openly repeated decade after decade. So we see that fear has become almost a secondary support structure to people. They are so accustomed to it that they feel like an addict. If there is nothing to fear or be apprehensive about, then they are like a chain smoker without a cigarette or an alcoholic without a drink. They don't know how to come to grips with that. And so this fear is manipulated both by our legislative bodies, and we're not talking about whether it's in the Capitol building in Washington, the Parliament, the Chancellery. These are just superficial, peripheral leaders that barely can keep their own thoughts straight. They have no privy to any of this other stuff. This is dealt with in a much deeper, more clandestine level.
Yeah.
So what happens is that this fear then is used as a very convenient tool. It's basically psychology 101. If you want to influence the thoughts and reactions of somebody else in any way, positive, negative, or what have you, you can use fear. And it is used daily. We see that in our conflicts around the world in these times right now. We see this in the UFO field specifically because we want to keep people imbalanced and away from the truth. And the truth is they don't want you to have any type of progressive, beneficial interaction with intelligence from beyond this world. Somebody said to me, well, we're ready. Now, we're ready. The people are ready. I'm ready, blah, blah, blah. And my answer is, are you really? Because in my estimation, I would say the people aren't ready at all. None whatsoever.
No, if we talk about the broad population, right? We're talking,
yes,
worldwide.
Yes. And not only the broad population, but the smaller population too.
Yeah.
Because what happens is that the simplest concept that would come from our space neighbors is free energy propulsion. This one little item, and we're not talking about their science, their understanding about creation, their social upbringing, all these other things. We're just talking about one simple thing. Free energy would totally transform, without control, instantaneously, the entire structure of our world. How we run it, how we manipulate it, who pays for it, who suffers for it, who's afraid of it. And so, and it affects all the markets. So everybody says, well, I'm ready, until they find out, well, if the market crashes, there goes my retirement, or there goes my savings, or this or that, or what have you. So when the change is closer to home, people then start thinking, well, it's all right if somebody over there makes a change, but I don't want to have to make it. And then the truth is, this is a global change in just one little tiny aspect of it. And so that is one of the reasons why it is kept away from us. One, because the people who control the power base on this world want to keep controlling it. And two, to the greatest extent, the majority of the people don't want it to change either, because they're comfortable with what they have.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, because people in general always say, yeah, I'm ready for change. But when you come into the nitty-gritty of their financial wealth or whatever, then people back off. Then they do not want change, because just look at the inflation at the moment, which we are having worldwide, actually. It's really hurting some people. And
well, it's hurting a lot of people. I mean, in this country alone, the people are spending almost $700 more a month for food substance and groceries that they didn't have before, while the politicians laugh and giggle and make millions and transport wealth from one place to the next and manipulate everything. And then they say to us, well, we may have to have a nice little war here, and we have a conflict of interest there. So guess what? You get to pay for that too. And so there's never a point in time when the people stand up and say enough is enough. The last time they did that was in this country was in 1775. And so I think that I don't see that change coming on a global scale. People ask me, am I hopeful? Always. But I'm hopeful for the individual, for their understanding. I'm not so hopeful for the society. I mean, think of it this way. Think of it that if one of these spaceship lands and opens a door and says, come on, let's go for a ride. Let's go see new things in new places. How many people would turn it down and run the other direction?
At least 99 out of 100. At least.
That's right.
So
that's good, because I plan to be number 100.
Number 100.
And I need room for my golf club.
Yeah. But that is so true, actually. But that brings us actually to another subject, which is rampant at the moment in the U.S. at least, very much up front in the Congress and the Senate, with the amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act by Schumer, the majority leader of your Senate, and also of the small group of people, which is bipartisan in the Congress, which is dealing with they want more transparency. Let's call it transparency, not disclosure maybe, but transparency about what do the government knows about UFOs and the UAPs, as they call them now. But I think I take my hat off for the initiative by the bipartisan group. But will they accomplish much? Let's say that a few more whistleblowers have actually stepped forward besides David Grush, but in close hearings with the select groups of the Congress, and they have testified also to the intelligence general. I think it's called the intelligence general little something. I can't remember what he is. The general inspector of the intelligence community, I think it's called. There are more that have stepped forward. I think about 20 or 30 extra whistleblowers, which is protected by the law in the U.S. to a certain extent. But they have come forward, and they are also people who are inside the program. That means of recovery of craft, which they confirm actually has been not actual recovery, but some have landed, intact, and others have where it's pieces from a craft or whatever. But that is actually a fact. That cannot be denied. That is actually a fact.
That's true. But then let's look about the fact that this is not, by any stretch of the imagination, something new and extraordinary, noteworthy. No. If you look at I saw one person comment that said, well, how come they can travel millions of miles of space and they still crash? Well, everything is mechanical. Exactly. Sometimes things fail. I mean, what kind of an arrogant statement is that? But let's look at things that have been recovered. We know that there have been pieces of wreckage recovered in Siberia in 1908. We know that there is wreckage recovered in Mexico in a zone that is that highly magnetically fluctuating. We know the Cape Girardeau incident in 1941 that happened before Roswell in 1947. We know that the major players, whether it was Jesse Marcel and his son, also who was a doctor, came forward and wrote about that and exposed it. And the father sat on that for many, many decades because as his implied loyalty to the government and the military and the oath that he signed. And then we haven't even gotten to the recovery of the craft in Aztec, in Socorro, in White Sands, New Mexico. I mean, this is not something that is out of the blue. So the problem is that we have had this information. We have done reverse technology. I mean, if you look at Colonel Curacau's book, The Day After Roswell, he makes the statement that a lot of the night vision and stealth technologies and many of these high sophisticated science developments all came from the reversed engineer or from direct engineer of wreckage or intact craft that were recovered. So the trouble is now you have the so-called whistleblowers, but the whistleblowers aren't going back far enough to acknowledge the fact that this has been happening for a while. They're trying to give the impression that this is just a new thing and they can't take it anymore and they want to step forward and give the information. The problem is that by watching what they have to say, some of it, you may say to yourself, well, I can recognize some of that and I can look through that, but other parts of it are not true whatsoever. So the problem is that there are still two sides that are being smashed together in order to carry another agenda. So it is not, because remember, first of all, once you are in the military and you sign these documents of secrecy and loyalty, they're for life. They're not rescindable. You cannot walk away from them. You cannot decide one day you want to do it, the next day you don't. No. Secondly, anything you say has to be vetted by the Pentagon. They're not stupid down there. I can guarantee you that.
No.
Right? And so they're not going to allow out anything that they haven't predetermined will get them to a certain agenda of where they want to take this subject. And you've got to watch very, very carefully. And that's the problem with this field. Everybody is running to jump on the bandwagon. Why? First of all, because they have no experience themselves. So consequently, they've got to climb on the backs of somebody who claims to have some and thereby be carried forward like a wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
So the problem is that they can't determine for themselves, these claim jumpers, what is true and is what not. So they're the first ones to jump on it and say, oh, look at this, look at that, look at this. Like the statement I made earlier about the official who said that the UFOs are hiding from us so not to scare us. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And history and publication has proven that. So
Yeah.
then you have to say, well, if something here makes a little sense, why doesn't the rest of it coincide with it? And then when you
Yeah.
look at that, you start to have to think, what is going on here, because it isn't right.
Yeah, that is where the let's say the Pentagon and disinformation is incorporated into this subject, because, like, disinformation has to have an ounce of truth in it, but most of it is pure conjecture, right? And they just come up with it. It's the bait.
Fishing.
It's the bait that pulls you in. It's the bait that pulls you in, and that is the disinformation agent's top job. That is to pull people in.
Like some of the personalities in this field who stand on the stage and say, these two people here are my bodyguards because what I have to say is so unbelievably, out of this world, so to speak, that my life is in danger. Well, I got news for you. If somebody wants you dead, you're dead. You're dead yesterday. Well, you go up there and you talk on the stage with your bodyguard. Somebody walks in with a pass key into your room, sprays a little something on your toothbrush. Later that night, you brush your teeth, you fall over, you're gone. So this is nothing more than the bait.
Yeah.
And once you realize what type of bait is being thrown out there, then you start to see a little more clearly behind what they're trying to push. And they are like drug dealers. They're trying to push their product.
Yeah, that is actually correct. Yeah, but just to elaborate just a little bit about this, could the whistleblowers' plans be part of a true wanting to talk about the story and doesn't care about what's happening to themselves? Let's call it a limited disclosure. Could that actually happen? And is that actually a thing that Pentagon has prepared through the years? I do believe that they had a disclosure way back. That was in the plan.
Remember,
but what can be explained?
Not one single space mission, starting with Mercury through Gemini through Apollo, not one single one operated without being accompanied by UFOs.
Yeah.
And this is stated very clearly by Marie Chatelain, who owned the patents to all the telecommunication systems and developed it for NASA. And it's in his book, Our Ancestors Came from Outer Space. So you have them. Then you have your military personnel. Then you have your scientists like Werner von Braun.
Yeah.
And so what did he think? He thought that he had a family, he had children, and he had grandchildren. And when somebody says to you, you either comply or those innocents are going to be the ones paying the price.
Yeah.
Then you say, you know what? It's not worth it. I just keep my mouth shut and I'll let posterity and history either reveal this or not.
Yeah. Let posterity deal with it.
If you ride out like a crusader, with your sword, you better watch out because you're going to attract a lot of arrows.
Yeah. Exactly. That is actually quite correct, Glenn. But I do believe that they, through the years, have had a possible disclosure ready if things warranted it.
Well,
But
in
you know
1950, in 1952, Truman wanted to disclose.
Yeah.
The military talked him out of it. In fact, we printed 120 million leaflets that were supposed to be distributed to the population of the United States, in which it was going to divulge this information, and the military put their hard hoof right on top of it and squished it. And of course, the next year, Eisenhower came into power, and then things changed from that standpoint.
Yeah.
But I will say this. In my experience, or in my family's experience, and I have had conferences with scientists as well-known figures in their field. I do not divulge their identity because I don't believe in jeopardizing them, just like I don't put up pictures of space people that I have a few of, because I'm not going to jeopardize them in order to try to make a name for myself. I could care less.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that a certain sliver of information is occasionally seeping through the gaps. And you have to be prepared to see that amongst the plethora of all the other garbage that's out there. And if you do build that foundation upon truth, then you cannot be fooled by all the other stuff that's in there. So when I look at something, I look at that article and I say, okay, and we did this together when we talked about the whistleblower situation. And I said, okay, boom, 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 boom. This is blah, 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 blah. So I said, okay, there's X amount here that's okay, but there's 12 items to me that are absolutely incorrect. So that means that good stuff and bad stuff are being put together. That means either the person who's doing it doesn't know, or
more likely,
worse than that, is purposely doing it. And I think in some aspects, they don't know because they're given a very little sliver. And then most people are not satisfied with that sliver. They want to have more, or they want to be known to have more. So that way it's easier to feed them the incorrect stuff because they're willing to gobble it too. For them, we talked about bait. They also have bait, and that bait might be on a sliver of their experience.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and it works across the entire spectrum. I have a friend of mine. He is long retired, but was responsible in the Middle East during the first Gulf War for tracking and categorizing all the sightings of the UFOs that happened there, because always during times and areas of conflict, we're being monitored, especially now, because we are stupid enough to talk about nuclear weapons once again. My God, we thought John Kennedy put that to rest, and now these fools want to try again. I mean, when you've tested over 1,000 weapons, both underground and above ground and in the water, a bomb is a bomb is a bomb. It's not going to be any different the next time around. So all this is posturing of power. Who has power to wield? And the trouble is, they're playing with the power of total destruction of all life on this planet. And they don't care. And I think we need to make sure they do.
Yeah, exactly, Glenn. Let's shift to the let's call it all the UFO experts in the UFO field. Confusion running rampant for years. The small grays, portals, interdimensional beings, poltergeist, shapeshifters, 150 different species visiting, abductions, multiverse, which is a theory where several universes exist outside our own. But why describe what we don't understand in this universe with a theory that other universes influence us somehow and explain why we are here? We will never get answers to these questions anyway. And then we have
You know why?
and then
Because
no,
we
just
don't have an active space program
that
in
is
which
it.
we go out and we give people openly
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
So what happens is everything is supposition.
Yeah.
The greatest difference between the space visitors and ourselves are not how we look, not how we are composed inside, not our RNA and DNA in our blood. The greatest difference is they are the knowers
Yeah.
of what they experience,
Yeah.
and all we do are the guessers, the
Yeah.
theorizers,
Yeah.
because we have made an entire industry out of that. It wasn't long ago that it was printed that theory will be accepted as fact
Yeah.
until otherwise said so. Well, to me, that's the exact opposite of science.
Yeah, it is exactly the opposite.
And so we do nothing more than theorize, and we don't know diddly squat. I see programs on television, how the universe works. I have to laugh. We haven't a clue.
Yeah.
We have not an idea at all how the universe works.
No, we don't.
And so when you have these so-called experts standing up, first of all, tell me, who can be an expert in this field? Who?
Nobody who hasn't gone there to watch it. Nobody.
Nobody is an expert. Even if you've gone there and watched it, you're not an expert.
No.
Because there's more behind that which you experienced already behind that again. Because it's never ending. No. So this so-called accolade of experts or alphabet soup behind our names in academia is nothing more than to impress ourselves and impress our colleagues so we can all go to the same little coffee clutch and our same little luncheons and things like that. And everybody says, oh, hi, I accept you and you and you and you, because nobody wants to stand up and say, hey, wait a minute, this makes no sense. That is especially true in the UFO field, where they all line up behind each other like sled dogs and they all get the same view.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, they're not they're not coming up with anything new. So these experts are self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
And you would have to have a heck of an ego and a sense of narcissism to claim yourself an expert. I'm not an expert. I'm the first one to say that. But what I am is I'm familiar intimately with the experiences that I've had, with the information that I've been subjected to face to face. That's the difference. That doesn't make me an expert, but it sure as hell makes me knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And so we have to let go of this creature feature nonsense. I cannot understand why anybody thinks that the moment that you leave this world, that everything turns into the Halloween show of creatures, Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, somebody with 5 heads and 10 eyeballs and all these other things. This is nothing but sheer imagination.
But I can tell you, I can tell you a little guess about why it is like that. But you continue.
Go ahead. No, please.
No, I say if people, you know, they are imagining leaving this world and what can be out there, and they are, remember the word imagining, because why would life that we observe on this planet, which is not unique at all, which we think is very unique. We are the little gemstone in the universe where life exists and nowhere else, because we are so special, but we are not. It is common like you wouldn't believe it. And we are nothing special. And why would what life is about, change because we go to another system? It doesn't. It is, the conditions are exactly the same everywhere. Why do you think the universe is this big? To give the opportunities. That is it.
It shows you that we really have no concept of God or creative intelligence or creative force, because we are insulting that very creative intelligence by implying the fact that everything else out there, the trillions of stars and galaxies and planets, have absolutely no function. It's just our one little tiny piece.
It was just to create the Earth, that everything was created. Okay. Is that maybe a bit of delusions of grandeur, maybe?
Well, of course, but remember, we've been taught that. We've been taught that by science. We've been taught that by religion.
But that doesn't make it right.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. And so the idea is that when a few people stood outside of that, I mean, think about how many people thought the Earth was flat, let alone the ones who are still thinking today, or the ones who think the Earth is hollow and the hobbits are living down inside there, or I mean, we completely ignore the science of reality. Right? We know that the Earth is 4,000 miles thick. These are various mantle plates, and that when we get to an iron core, that is liquid, and it helps spinning and create the gravitational field. But oh no, we don't want to accept that. We want to accept some fairy tale that has been promoted and projected off of television, or by somebody who says, hey, I time traveled and I was sitting there, but I forgot to bring back any souvenirs to prove the fact that I was actually there, you know, and it's just, we need to move beyond this. And I'm afraid that it has become so convoluted and so destructive that it's very difficult to move beyond this anymore, because with the vast majority of people being involved with it, they will fight tooth and nail to continue to perpetuate their method of persuasion. So the best that we can do is provide some alternative information for those who really still can put two and two together and still have some rational thought and take a look and see, this makes sense. I need to look further into that.
And it actually, like your book states, provide a reality check, because that is actually what is needed in the UFO field, because it is just like, you know, people follow the latest fad in the field and then they go nuts about that. And they have no grasp of reality in this field. That is
because we're not taught to live the now. We're taught to either worry about the future, which there's nothing you can do about,
constantly,
or the past, which is long gone. But in reality, there's only the ever-present now, because the moment you take a breath and let it out, it's the past, and taking in that breath draws in the future. So they're all together, accordion together, which means that there is only the ever-present now, and what are you going to do with it?
And I have chosen to say there is only the ever-present future, because, and where you don't know what happens, and that is actually what you have to embrace. You have to embrace that time, as we perceive it, moves forward in a constant, never ending, and it never stops.
That's right, and it's not set in stone.
No. It can't
because there are so many variables that what you do, what you don't do, did you do this way, that way, whatever. So the idea is that there are so many variables that anybody that tells you that they can tell you rock solid what the future will be, they're full of it too. The only thing that you can do is you can do trend analysis, and that's what Nostradamus did. He did nothing. He didn't have any crystal ball of any value. All he did was trend analysis. So let me say, if I aggravate these people enough, they're going to get miffed off, and then they're going to go and attack those people. So if I sit here and say, war is coming, then suddenly I'm a great prophet. No, it's simply trend analysis. It's called cause and effect. Whatever I set into motion, there will be an effect.
Exactly.
That's simple.
Exactly. That is quite simple. But Glenn, what shall we do as individuals about the UFO field, which is just confused and they have no clue. What can we do as individuals? What is there to do other than pick up your book and read a good and a real representation?
I'm not the only advocate out here.
No.
There are plenty of people. You have some material. George has plenty of material. There are a good number of people who have misconstrued and misrepresented things, but still there is viable information out there. I would say that all of us have within ourselves an intuitive, conscious persona. And this is aligned with that which constructs truth. So, for instance, how many times have you listened to somebody say something and you think to yourself, boy, that's a whole bunch of bull, and
Many times.
and I don't need to listen to it anymore, right? It is because you have an internal measure and meter upon which you can make evaluations. You are an intelligent being. As much as we hate to admit it, we are the highest form of intelligence in the cosmos. It doesn't mean that we are exhibiting it, but we have the potential. And the problem is that not only do we have the potential to exhibit it, we have the potential to go the complete other opposite direction and be complete morons. And so we have been, unlike the rest of creation, we have been given a choice, and we just have to learn to choose wisely. But the idea is that if you listen to something, I have found that some of the people that I have come across over time have intuitively gravitated towards the material we offer because they had told me that they felt that it related to them, that there was a connection there, that they could resonate with what was being offered to them. And so this is something that, of course, drives a lot of the other people crazy because they want to have something definitive because they can't make decisions. They don't want to have to make decisions. And of course, to make good decisions, you got to educate yourself. And we have to understand that if there's any sin, the greatest sin is ignorance. So we need to walk away from that and to make ourselves more and more cognizant. And I think that will help us. As far as development is concerned, we should keep one thing in mind. This planet is nothing more than a classroom. Picture a classroom on a lengthy ladder, like a fireman's ladder that goes up high and goes down the other direction low. And somewhere in this ladder, we here on Earth are stuck. Now, that means that while we may consider this place not very hospitable as far as society is concerned, not by nature, because nature has given us everything, but we have to understand that there are places worse than here, because the people that are there have to have a place to come up to. Just like we have to have a spot where we are to go up to as well, and hopefully not back down, because then we got to start a whole lot of work all over again. And so I think that this needs to now become an individual process where we use our intelligence, we educate ourselves, we put it into practice, right? As John Kennedy said here in the book, I put the quote in here that says, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. And that is the truth, because the only way we learn is by living with it and not just giving lip service.
That is so true, Glenn. Glenn, I think we will end on this wise note from John F. Kennedy. And I want to thank you for this little discussion and talk. Very interesting, as always. The next subject will be Adamski's photos, which we will talk about in detail in a later program. Thank you very much, Glenn, and have a great day.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you very much. I look forward to the next one.
Yes, me too.